right, so we are live, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. Today, we are continuing on with our epic high school careers-focused series of interviews with some amazing people from around the globe. Today, we are joined all the way in Denmark by Dr. Thea Bechshoft. So she is going to share some of the amazing work that she does, how she got into her career. We'll ask a few questions, and we'll wrap up with that. So thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Thea, and take us away.
Thank you so much, Jesse, and thank you everyone for listening in. So my name is Thea Bechshoft. I am a staff scientist with Polar Bears International, and I want to tell you a little bit about, who I am, what I've done, how I got here. So the little mermaid up here in the corner, that's to tell you that I am in Denmark right now, but I also am Danish. I was born and raised here. However, as you'll see, I've been traveling a lot. I started studying biology at the University of Copenhagen, and then it got time to find out what I wanted to write my master's about, and I couldn't really figure it out, so instead I went to the University Center in Svalbard, which is me sitting on the cliff here on the right. Svalbard is a group of islands that is pretty close to the North Pole. It's kind of in between Norway and the North Pole. And like I said, there's a university center there. So if you're interested in Arctic fieldwork, definitely check that out. Up there, I took more biology courses focused on Arctic biology. I saw my first polar bear in the wild. It was a very exciting time, and I ended up staying for a year and a half. It was supposed to be a couple of weeks, but yeah, things happen. When I was done with my courses in Svalbard, I was still looking for a good project and a good supervisor, and both of those things turned out to be in Norway, in Oslo. So that's me in the bottom left corner there holding an enormous polar bear skull that was collected maybe 50 years ago on Svalbard. So I ended up doing my master's project at the Natural History Museum in Oslo, at the University of Oslo. And the title of it is here, just for those of you who may be curious. Right. So after doing my master's, I didn't quite know what I wanted to do, but I put in an application for doing a PhD with one of my co-supervisors for the Skull project. He was in Denmark, and we ended up actually getting the funding for that. So instead of staying in Norway, I went back to Denmark to do my PhD. And that took me to East Greenland. This beautiful panorama is from East Greenland. Where we did field work a couple of seasons, a couple of spring months, and it was gorgeous. And we work with the local hunters there. There is a legal quota hunt for polar bears, and we were working with the hunters because we're looking at how pollution affects the health of the polar bears in this area. And the polar bears in East Greenland are very highly contaminated. And if you combine that with the fact that there is this quota hunt every year, that means that if there are any effects of the pollutants, this is where you would find it. And we could then get the samples to investigate that. All of that being said, I actually ended up working with polar bear hair, which is a very minimally invasive tissue to obtain. So I ended up working with polar bear hair, looking at hormones in it and how it related to the health, the welfare of the animals. After that, I'd now been working with polar bear skulls and with hunted polar bears, harvested polar bears. Then I went to Canada to do my postdoc, because in Denmark, when you're defending your PhD, you have a couple of people coming from other places in the world to ask you questions and really grill you on the subject. And one of those people was Professor Andy DeRoche from the University of Alberta in Canada. And, he really knew my work well because he'd been going through it in preparation for my defense. And so we talked, we applied to get money for a postdoc, and were successful. So I ended up spending 4 years or so in Canada. And this is the first time that I actually got a chance to work with live, albeit sedated, polar bears, as you can see in the bottom picture. So we went out on the helicopter, drugged some polar bears up in Viscount Melville, which is the star up here, if you can see where I'm pointing. And that was a huge experience too. But it also means that I have the privilege of being someone who has actually worked with polar bears from quite a few different areas in the high Arctic. I've tried to show them on this map with the little stars. So I still continued my work looking at polar bear hair, but of course, adding on a few more questions. Yeah, while I was in Canada, I started volunteering for Polar Bears International because they are a close collaborator with Professor DeRoche. And I found out what an incredibly wonderful organization it was. So I've been going to Churchill every fall since I started volunteering, which is now 8 years ago or so. And eventually, this volunteering then turned into a position as a staff scientist. So besides all of these things, I just wanted to say, my everyday life, unfortunately, does not consist of fieldwork all the time. There's a lot of time just spent in front of the screen, looking at data, doing statistics, writing, reading. Because I am an academic. I do have an academic career. So I go to conferences, I give talks, I write peer-reviewed scientific publications. These are some of the projects that I am a part of right now. Again, focusing on polar bear hair. I also do, it used to be in my spare time, so to speak, but now it's also as a representative for Polar Bears International that I go north. There are a lot of ships that go north with tourists who are eager to see polar bears in the wild. And I've been lucky enough to go on quite a few of those trips, which is just a huge privilege. Then, of course, I'm also active on social media. I'm on Twitter, and I also have this page on Facebook called Polar Bear Questions, which is something I started back when I started volunteering for PBI because I was so incredibly inspired by the people at Polar Bears International, but also by the interactions that I had with people while I was volunteering. And then finally, I also spend quite a lot of my time talking to journalists, working with artists, guest blogging, and all of those good things. So really, my days are quite diverse. Yeah.
Fantastic. What a cool story. And you covered so many of the questions that I like to highlight in my presentations. So I really, really appreciate that. So, by the way, the picture of the polar bears with journalists just made me think of polar bear journalists. I'm not sure if that's ever been something you've encountered in the field, but maybe for future, you can let us know if that happens. Another note before we dive in with a few more questions, if you guys are keen, anyone who's tuning in on YouTube, Facebook, etc., if you guys want to watch more of Dr. Bechshoft's presentations, she's done a number with us at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. You can check out more in-depth dives into some of the cool things and projects she's been a part of. So, Thea, you highlighted again the schooling that you needed to do, some of the day-by-day work. Is there something particularly exciting? Is there something that when you get to do it just particularly fulfills you? You're so eager to get up out of bed that day? Or is it all pretty crazy?
Something particularly exciting. Well, I mean, of course, the bears, right? Yeah. Getting to see a polar bear in its natural environment, nothing really beats that every time. But to be honest, I love meeting new people.
Yeah.
And I love brainstorming with people who are also focused on the Arctic, focused on research, focused on polar bears, trying to find out how we can make our different strengths, melt together, and what we can make from that. Just brainstorming new ideas. It's honestly, it's so much fun.
I love it as an answer. It's something that we get in a lot of our broadcasts. It's one of the chief things about being a scientist is that people get to work with other really excited, enthusiastic, talented people from all around the world. It's
Yes.
the biggest joy.
Yeah.
So really,
But also the fact that honestly, being a researcher is a very creative profession.
okay.
Yeah. You have to think out of the box so often, and that's not something that is often talked about.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
This is great. Okay, on the exact opposite side of this, is there something that if I'm in high school, I wanted your job, is there something that you would say with your experience, okay, consider this though, something like a drawback or a challenge that someone might need to consider before they attempted a career like this, if anything?
I would say if you consider like the presentation I just gave, the things I've been doing, you can see that I have moved between countries quite a lot. And also that I've traveled a lot and often for long periods of time. Like it's not unusual for me to be away from home for a month, for example, or more. So that is definitely something to consider. It depends on what other, desires you have in life, what you want to get out of it, what's important to you. And it also depends on your partner, your family, I've been very lucky. I've been able to say yes to so many opportunities, but not everyone can be so privileged.
Right. This is something that a couple other people in this series have brought up, actually, some of the things that you just need to account for when you're going to enter in a field of research or exploration of any kind. People have mentioned the money aspect of it, that if you want to get it's probably not the career for you. People have mentioned how do you really feel? But no, I love this. You're the first person to mention that there's a significant aspect of your life is going to be taken up with this in a very deep way, not something where you finish your day and go home and stay with your family.
Yeah.
You might be in the field or doing work that takes you away for quite some time. So I'm glad we covered that. Thanks. Well, again, we've covered so much. As one last message I'd like to see, if students wanted to learn more about you, learn more about careers in this field, learn more about where they could be, how they could become a polar bear researcher involved with something like this, where would you send them?
Well, I mean, there are many places to go and many good people to talk to. But one of the things I would like to do is to direct you to Polar Bears International's webpage, which is polarbearsinternational.org. And also to our YouTube channel, because we have done a lot of different webcasts and they're all archived there. And some of them are also related to, career choices and jobs in the Arctic. So I would say that's a good place to start. Yeah.
That's great.
Many places. Oh, I also want, before we're done, I wanted to add that, I work with polar bears. I'm a polar bear researcher. But there are so many other ways that you can get to work with polar bears or whatever it is that you're interested in. Like my colleagues at Polar Bears International, some are in HR, human resources, some are accountants, some are photographers, some are writers. There's so many different ways that you can get into whatever it is that you find exciting.
Yeah, this is something that we're getting increasingly in all our live sessions, some of these high school career-focused things as well, is the idea that no matter what you're interested in, if you want to be on a research vessel in the Arctic, if you want to go to be involved in NASA, like whatever you're keen on, whether you're a cook or an IT person or a carpenter or whatever, there are options, there are jobs available in that. I think that's such a valuable thing for students that might not be academically inclined, that might not want to do heavy-duty research, but want to be involved in something that's great and exciting like that. So
exactly.
I couldn't think of a better way to end. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yes, for all our students watching, do check out Dr. Thea's sessions on our YouTube channel. Check out Polar Bears International. It really is a great resource for you guys with videos, all sorts of great content and more. We know that Arctic science is becoming increasingly taught in schools around the world, so there's lots of great stuff there. And we hope you'll join us for a live session throughout the year with her again. So thanks so much for joining us again, Dr. Thea.
Thank you.